Hello, Zach, can you hear me?
Yep. Hi, Martin.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Hello.
Hello, folks.
Hello.
We have Martin and Glenessa and me.
And now while the agenda has 14, 15 first, I thought it might be better to do the Morris Street properties first, since you have to recuse for the first item, just so it's a little bit easier for you to leave the meeting when you have to recuse yourself.
Sure, I was thinking that too. And Martin, then you would take over for the Washington Avenue project, okay?
Okay, sure, no problem.
Do we know if Chris is coming?
I haven't heard him say that he wouldn't be attending, so.
Okay.
But he usually shows up around 6:05 because I think he's getting off work right around now anyways.
I will mention to all the board members and to you, Zach, while we're waiting, and those who are attending, that 563 New Scotland Avenue is finally underway. There is construction fence around it, and demolition has occurred of the building in which the post office was located. So that's finally getting off the ground.
Very interesting.
I know that I think the developers have communicated on and off that they were having supply chain issues and cost issues, but apparently they're finally breaking through that. We'll wait a few minutes for Chris, and then we can get started. Okay, Chris is available. Shall we get started, Zach? Okay.
Yep, the YouTube. Yep, it's all set.
All right. Good evening, everyone who is both on Zoom and possibly, I guess everybody is on Zoom now. And we have a few people that are here to listen in. This is a meeting of the Albany City Planning Board's workshop. And the purpose of the workshop is for the planning board members to view either new projects or projects that they've seen before that might have advanced or have changed. This is a dialogue between the staff and the planning board members, and do not include members of the public. However, this is an open meeting, so members of the public are welcome to listen in. Before we get started, I do want to ask Zach that our planning board meeting is scheduled for the 26th, and I think I told you I was unable to be there, but also unfortunately Roman Kuchera is having problems again with his eyes and had to do surgery, I believe today actually, and he will be out for the next meeting and possibly even the November meeting. So I did want to ask Zach if you have any predictions in reference to the 26th. Other than these two projects, will there be, do you know if there'll be more coming up? And if you look into the future in November, do you have, what's your sense of how much activity we have going?
Yeah, so for the 26th, the only case that would be on the agenda for potential action would be 1415 Washington Avenue, and I had checked at the last meeting just to make sure that there'd be quorum, which there is. So that's all set. And then I think for November, we have a few applications that are still percolating. So it'll probably be something where it'll be, you know, a concept review or an initial review. You know, I think, you know, again, for those instances, if there's an instance where someone needs to recuse themselves, you know, it's just going to be important for quorum. So I think, you know, if any of you are thinking that you're going to be out for either the workshop or the meeting in November, just let me know ahead of time, and we can try and reschedule if enough people can't make it. Or if you're not able to make a workshop, you can follow up with me. I can provide you some updates on applications, or if you have any questions, I can answer those.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, hopefully for the November meeting, we will have 4. And then in December, Roman should be back. So we have 2 items on the agenda, and since the first item, which is 1415 Washington Avenue, is a project that I need to recuse myself from, we're going to instead talk first about 16 to 20 Morris Street, 353 Lark Street. This is a project by Ron Stein, and it's a concept review of a development plan, which is the construction of a 4-story, 37,000 square foot multifamily structure. I think we've seen this before on a couple of meetings.
So this is actually the first presentation of this application.
Oh, okay. That's right. I'm confusing this with the other one down the street. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no worries. So this is a photo of the site. This is at the corner of Morris and Lark Street. The proposed site is a combination of 4 properties right now. The house that you see in the picture over there has been demolished. That was on 353 Lark Street. So that'll include that portion of the property as well. And this is located right across the street from a mixed-use community urban zoning district, and that was also the site of 25 Delaware Avenue, where that project was just recently approved by the board as well for multifamily housing. This project is located in a RM or multifamily zoning district, and is also adjacent to an R2 or 2-family zoning district. So this is a initial or concept site plan for the project. The envelope of the building will be close along the frontages of Morris and Lark Street. And as you can see in the site plan, there's a little bit of green space and a setback from the building and the adjacent 2-family building. The applicant's proposing to use this portion right here to comply with the required passive recreation space for the property. Since it's a multifamily building that has more than 20 units, it's required to provide at least 10% of the site area through passive or active recreation space. So this will have benches and grassy area. This rectangle right here is proposed to be used for stormwater detention. And I believe that's a subsurface tank as well. And the applicant's also looking to do outdoor bicycle storage right here in a gated area. So moving into the elevations, this is the Lark Street elevation. Some of the buildings will have patio space, balconies. And this is the Morris Street elevation where the primary entrance for the building will be. And then this is the south elevation. And then this is the western elevation.
Interesting. Why no windows on the south side? Is there another building right next door or something?
I believe that's trying to accommodate the property owners on Myrtle Ave.
Okay.
That would back up against that. You know, I think we heard some comments from the residents of Crown Terrace for 42 and 47 Besh, which was a similar instance where they were looking not to have windows, you know, immediately adjacent into their yard area.
Right.
So I think, you know, this is the same applicant. So it's kind of taking those comments and trying to move that forward with future designs as well. So again, it's not creating those privacy issues.
Okay, I do like the on the Lark Street facade, all the windows on the ground floor. It's got a much friendlier look than some of the you know, some of the garage spaces and whatnot we've been seeing on ground floors.
And parking is located in the building?
So right now there's no parking proposed as part of the application. You know, this is at a concept stage. So I think there's been some initial feedback from members of the neighborhood association that they're concerned that there's no parking being provided and concerns about the number of units. So I think this is going to be, you know, a discussion point. Again, this is, you know, the concept review. So this is kind of the first look and a good opportunity if there are ways to modify the design that can be modified going forward. So for, you know, the multifamily buildings, they're required to have one off-street parking space per unit. This is within a quarter mile of frequent transit stop. So that reduces the parking requirement by 8 spaces. There are, I believe, an additional 8 spaces on the frontage of this property. However, since this is in a residential zoning district, those don't count towards or reduce the required number of off-street parking spaces. Whereas we've seen in, you know, mixed-use districts where that does reduce the number of required off-street parking spaces. So at this point, the applicant hasn't provided, you know, an area variance application, a waiver application, or a transportation demand management plan to show how, you know, the remaining 32 parking spaces, you know, will be accommodated for either through a waiver of the provision, a variance from the provision, or, you know, using other methods such as, you know, potentially a universal CDTA pass, bike share bikes, or bike share memberships, or other features in order to kind of accommodate or move away from that. You know, there's been some articles in the newspaper, and again, some initial conversations with our department and the neighborhood association, just that this is anticipated to be workforce housing. And I believe the applicant is stating that, you know, they're trying to market these apartments to people who will likely not have cars as a result. The anticipated rents are supposed to be between, I think, $900 and $1,100. So that might be incorporated as part of a variance or waiver request from the applicant as this application moves forward.
Is this in a resident? I can't remember. Is that section of the city part of a residential permit parking?
I'd have to look at the map. It is, I believe so. And if not, it's probably just within the catchment where people who live within this area can sign up to get a residential permit pass. I can look that up as we're going through the meeting right now, and I can share that in just a few minutes.
And this is the lot right across from the Price Chopper, Market 32, isn't it?
So this is kind of in between. So here, let me
Yeah.
turn on my annotation. So this is where Price Chopper would be. This is 25 Delaware, where the Signal building is, the former Senior Citizen Center, and then this is where the site is.
Right, below, yeah, it's below the former Senior Citizen Center.
So it'll be right across the street from the new apartment building there, correct? They'll face each other.
Yeah. Are there any other comments or questions? So
Right now.
I guess
So
we
this
have.
area,
Go on, Zach.
sorry, Al.
Yeah.
This area is within the residential permit parking zone.
Okay.
And I can, give me one sec, I'll just transition to the map just so that everyone right now can see. So this is the map of Zone A, and I believe this is where the project site would be. So it is within that permit parking zone.
Okay.
And then I do have some quick floor plans to go through. These, I'll switch back to the PowerPoint. Sorry about that. So the floor plans pretty much are consistent for all 4 floors. There's 10 units per floor. They're all 1 bedroom, 1 bath units. The median size of the units is 730 square feet. And they basically all have the same configuration except for the lobby. And then there are a few kind of bump outs on the upper floors as well that increase some of the unit square footage on the 2nd through 4th floors.
Is this also, this site, is this also part of the Park South Urban Renewal Plan?
Yeah, that is. So as part of that, the Park South Urban Renewal Plan, or PSURP, identified this area saying that it is permitted for multifamily housing, but it's just required to be new construction. So that does comply with the intent and the goal of that plan.
Okay, so that yeah, that's what I thought. And I'm assuming that perhaps one of the markets for these apartments might be folks who work at Albany Medical Center and their affiliated businesses that are in that area.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think for there's a lot of job centers, nearby with the Empire State Plaza and, other jobs along Lark Street as well. So I think there's lots of different potential employees that could benefit from that in and around the area. But the applicant can provide a little more information on that at the meeting.
Okay. Other comments? Okay. We have a little bit more here. I'm sorry.
That's okay. This is just the roof plan. They're looking to provide an access stair. There'll be mechanical equipment, plumbing, electrical on here that'll be obscured through a cornice. And then just kind of reiterating some of the points that I already mentioned about the number of units, the median size, the anticipated rents, and the required amount of parking.
Mm-hmm. Other comments from the board? Questions?
No.
Okay,
None for me, Al.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on then to the next item on the agenda, which is 1415 Washington Avenue. And as you know, for the record, I will be, because of my association with the Habitat for Humanity, the Capital District, and the possibility of them being involved in this project, I will sign off and wish everybody well and leave this meeting for to be chaired by Martin Hall. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Al. See you in a couple of weeks.
Okay. So for the board members, at the last meeting, some of the board members had requested some information, regarding other communities that have affordable housing requirements, and if there are mechanisms or ways to waive that requirement. And then I think there was just encouragement for the applicant to consider, methodology or some sort of method for, considering how affordable housing should or should not be provided for. And I think Martha had stated she would provide some information as well. So Martha, I'll go through my slides, but feel free to jump in if there's any overlap or if I'm missing something as well.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Cut you off. And that's well, I'll see what, maybe there will be some overlap, but my information will be coming on the Friday before the meeting in which the board is voting, which is scheduled for October 26th. So the Friday before is on the 22nd.
Gotcha. Thank you for that clarification. So this is a chart that the applicant had provided, and this is a list of communities that they found where there were affordable housing requirements. So the applicant has included the municipality's name, the threshold of when affordable housing is required, whether there's a dormitory defined as part of their code, and if there are alternatives permitted. For the most part, a lot of these communities have lower thresholds than Albany does, but a lot of them are also downstate as well, where there's an increased need for affordable housing, or I think increased pressure to provide affordable housing. None of the other communities include dormitory as a use or as a single use within their codes, and it looks like 8 municipalities provide alternatives. In the information provided, it wasn't spelled out exactly all of the alternatives that were provided or permitted, but I'm assuming a lot of these are payment in lieu of. But if there are any more questions related to this, I can relay those to the applicant so they can provide that information prior to the next meeting.
Hi, it's Glennie. So yeah, I'd be interested in seeing what the alternatives were. I don't know if I understand you're saying that it most likely be payment in lieu of, but if it's lesser housing, that's important as well. So lesser number of units, those alternatives, without knowing what they are, can be a myriad of things. So I definitely would like to know what they are. But also, it also brings me concern that they don't use dormitory in the code. So then in these municipalities where they brought these up. So if they don't use dormitory, then my next question is, do they have our dormitories included? We have it spelled out, but these other municipalities may not, and still may include dormitories to be required to still have follow their rules regarding affordable housing. So that I would like to have that clarified as well. If they've done this research, they should have that information, in my opinion. Um, again, my concern is that I know that the USDO in its original passing was passed sort of on a rushed basis. And this may be one of those things where, it wasn't thought out and now we're trying to apply it. And it's like, okay, we need to go back and look at this. So that's also something, I don't know if you, as planning, have brought that to the attention of legislators as well, because I just don't see how a dorm, based upon how it's supposed to be run, can be subject to affordable housing principles. And it's just an overall thought, not, I don't think it'll affect this one, but if we have another one in the future, maybe something that needs to be changed within the USDO and carve out dormitories, maybe separate from affordable housing provisions, because I do see the argument of how difficult it is for them to live up to the code in its current form.
Yeah, and so just for a little bit of background, our department's going through kind of an initial review of the code after it was adopted in 2017 to provide some comprehensive edits and updates. This was an issue that was brought up a lot. And I think we agree that it's, a significant enough issue that we're not addressing this specifically right now because it's something, that warrants time and consideration. So it's not leading, to a future or rushed text amendment or language amendment that creates, negative impacts for projects going forward. I think this is definitely something where if you as board members feel like there's specific language or ways to clarify these provisions, I think those recommendations are welcomed, so that when we're looking to do future updates related to affordable housing provisions, that we can incorporate those and think about those as we're starting to tackle that more comprehensively. But just to recap, Glenisa, what you requested, you wanted to know specifically what the permitted alternatives were, and just to confirm, even if dormitory is not a specific use, whether it's included in other uses in these municipalities' codes.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from board members on this?
No.
Okay.
Zach, can I? Oh.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead with what you're going on.
No, I can go back. Sorry.
No, my questions weren't specific to this slide, just a general appeal, so I can do that when you're done.
So the applicant also provided this, so they decided to take a look to see, if they were to strictly comply with the code, how that would work. So they were, again, this came up in the conversation at last month's meeting, looking at the restrictions based on, whether this is someone's principal residence, whether they, how much they earn, making sure that they earn no more than 100% of the area median household income for the city of Albany, and making sure that they're either a student, an employee of a university as well. So the applicant provided a flow chart. It's a large flow chart, so some of the text won't be visible, but I can try and walk through it if there are any questions. So this is kind of the flow chart. So the first question is, are you a student or are you an employee of the university? I'll turn on the annotation so it's a little bit easier. So this part of the flow chart deals with if you're a student, and if you're using this, and actually I can't see this, so I'm going to pull this up in a separate document. So apologies for that. Bear with me just 1 second as I do that. But this is a flow chart, just basically showing what the applicant would have to do when reviewing applications to ensure that the prospective tenants who would be living in these units would comply with the regulations as well. So I'm actually just gonna switch to a PDF just so it's easier to zoom in and out, but it'll be the same content. All right. So the first level, I'll try and zoom in on this, is whether you're a college student or not, or whether you are an employee or trainee of a medical or technical institute in the city. And then it goes through the flow chart of the next one is if you're dependent on your parents' tax returns, whether this will be your primary or principal residence, and then whether you earn more than 100% of the area households median income for the city of Albany. So I think, what the applicant is trying to show is there are a lot of instances where, potential residents would not qualify. So I think that's just kind of showing their potential methodology if they were to strictly comply with these regulations. Are there any questions on this flow chart before I go back to the PowerPoint and continue through some of the information, the additional information that the applicant provided?
Is this on the Dropbox?
Yes, and I think I had uploaded this to the self-service site, and if not, I will do that immediately after this meeting so that members of the public can view this as well. Okay, I'll just switch back quickly to the PowerPoint. So the applicant, as their proposed alternative, they're proposing to make a one-time payment of $300,000. Habitat for Humanity uses these to kind of fill the gap in. I'm just going to go to the next slide quickly, but I'll go back to this slide. But Habitat for Humanity provided these, estimated construction costs. It normally costs them $250,000 to construct a house. They usually sell it for $150,000. They need a subsidy of $100,000 in order to fill in the gap. Normally, when they get public funds to fill in the gap, they get $75,000. So the proposal would provide, the $25,000 to kind of fill in the gap for these projects. So that would fill in the gap for 12 proposed townhomes. So the applicant is estimating that the average number of people living in these homes would be 3 to 5. So it could potentially impact or house 22 individuals. So it's, again, just trying to show that this will offset the number of or provide housing for, in the applicant's view, a potentially larger number of people as opposed to strict compliance with the affordable housing provision, which would provide housing in 12 studio units. Are there any questions on this information? Any additional information that you would like to see prior to the next meeting?
I have a question. How much, if they were required to have affordable housing, and I know this question was probably asked, and I'm not remembering. If they were to have affordable housing within that building, how many units would they, out of all of the units in there, how many units would be subject to affordable housing?
Yeah, so when we looked at this, and when I looked at this, so the definition for a dwelling unit specifically says that it includes 1 to 3 unrelated individuals. So there are a certain number of 4-bedroom units that wouldn't be required to comply with this provision because any units with 4 bedrooms would not, or has the potential to not align with the definition for a dwelling unit. So when I looked at this, it was looking at the studios, 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. That came out to, with being 5% of the units, that came out to 8 of the total units out of the total 231 would be required to be affordable.
And in those units, how many people could they house? Do you know that answer? The maximum number.
I would have to pull that information. I think some of that is dependent on the size of the dwelling units themselves. Normally when we require affordable housing, we require that the mix of the units is comparable to the overall mix of units within the building. I can try and pull up the floor plans quickly on my end just to do a rough check, but I think the majority of these were studio units, so a lot of them are just going to be housing 1 or 2 people, but there are a few 2-bedroom units that could theoretically house 2 to 4 people within them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I'm just going to do that calculation real quickly. So looking at this, I actually had the unit mix a little bit wrong. So there are 83 proposed 2-bedroom units and 67 studio units. So the mix would approximately be 55% of the units would need to be 2-bedroom, and then 45% of the mix would need to be studio. So when you look at that, it looks, so 4 units would be 2-bedroom and 4 units would be studio. So, the studios could provide housing for 1 to 2 people, and the 2 bedrooms could provide housing for 2 to 4 people. So, that would be a maximum of 24 people could be housed through those units. So fairly comparable if they're proposing that about 22 people would be served through the construction of these new townhomes.
Got it. Thank you. And that's what I was trying to see if what they were offering was comparable to what they would have to do under the code. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's it in terms of slides. Brad, I know you were wanting to bring up something at the end. So if there's no other questions, I think it's probably the right time for that.
Yeah, I was
Okay, yep.
just wanted to remind everybody that this project's been under review since August of 2020. It's roughly 14 months. It's about 3 times our average review period. Now, I know a lot of that was related to the traffic mitigation, and I don't think we thought we'd be here on this issue, but I understand we are, and I think that the board is being very diligent and thoughtful in parsing through this issue, which I'm sure is going to come up at some point in the future, at least the fee in lieu of discussion. But, I just want to put forward my belief, just being involved with the drafting of the code, that, the intent, and I think the reading of the code is that the affordable housing provision doesn't apply here. And we're also talking about a dormitory on Washington Avenue where students are going to live. It's not going to be the most attractive location for, say, a family to move into an affordable unit. It's not to say that just families need affordable units, but it's sort of an awkward application of the principle. I think the applicant, rather than file an appeal, which I would have done if I were them, they put forward a proposal. And now they've doubled the amount they're putting forward. And I think that presumably they still could file an appeal at some point in the future, should they want to look at the literal reading of the code and make that argument. So I think, I would encourage the board to take a really close look at what's being proposed here. I don't think it's really going to set a precedent. We have a limited number of dormitories, and, the city's made clear that the fee in lieu of or alternative policies for affordable housing units generally is not something that we're supportive of at this time. I mean, if the council wants to revisit that issue and consider alternatives, I think we'd be willing to discuss it. But I think our goal is to also endorse the inclusionary aspects of that as well, which isn't necessarily accomplished by the fee in lieu. So again, my main request is just the board think closely about ideally making a decision one way or the other at this upcoming meeting, because I think the project is sort of hanging by a thread. And I hate to lose the project based upon this one particular issue. So my 2 cents. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anyone else? Okay. I think we're all set then. Zach, anything else? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I'm fine.
Oh, okay.
I'll see y'all later.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Zach doesn't have anything. I think we're done.
Just one quick reminder, this does need to go to the county planning board. So if there are any revisions or modifications that they recommend, if the board goes against that, that requires majority plus 1. So just since there's only going to be 3 board members, I'll be sharing those just so that you know about those ahead of time. Again, the county planning board usually provides limited comments, but just something to keep in mind of. And again, just for quorum purposes, that there'll only be 3 of you there that are able to vote. So again, if there's any changes in your availability, please let us know as soon as possible so that we can, make that change to the meeting schedule.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and I guess we're done then. I'll see you all in 2 weeks. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.